Hello. Well, we're going to pick up in the book of Numbers, chapter 2, and let's jump right in. I'm going to read the first 9 verses. Numbers, chapter 2, verses 1 through 9. Now the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, and when you hear me say the Lord spoke. I mean, that tells me, which it may seem kind of crazy, but God is able to speak. Sometimes we may not wonder if He's speaking today, but this text tells me that the Lord, Yahweh, spoke to Aaron and Moses, saying, what did He say? The sons of Israel shall camp, each by his own standard, with the banner of their fathers' households. They shall camp around the tent of meeting at a distance. Shall camp around the tent of meeting at a distance. So basically their standard banners, I kind of see them as really synonyms, but it's basically the same word for a flag or ensign. You'll see it sometimes referred to as a sign, and I'll comment maybe a little bit more after I read these 9 verses. I'm trying to get some comments in here just to give us some understanding. Verse 3, now those who camp on the east side toward the sunrise shall be of the standard of the camp of Judah by their armies, and the leader of the sons of Judah, Nahshon, the son of Amminadab, and his army, even their numbered men, 74,600. Those who camp next to him shall be of the tribe of Issachar, and the leader of the sons of Issachar, Nethanel, the son of Zuar, and his army, even their numbered men, 54,400. Then comes the tribe of Zebulun, and the leader of the sons of Zebulun, Eliab, the son of Helon, and his army, even his numbered men, 57,400. The total of the numbered men of the camp of Judah, 186,400, by their armies. They shall set out first. Now you see in these first 9 verses that, and we've talked about it before in the first chapter, Israel is preparing to go to war. And God is going to be the leader to lead them into this war. And God has told them that if they follow Him, and we'll maybe look at a verse or 2 that'll kind of cover that, but if Israel would faithfully follow God, they wouldn't have anything to worry about. Now let's jump down to verses 16 and 17. And then we'll comment on the entire thing. Verses 16 and 17. The total of the number of men of the camp of Reuben, 151,450, by their armies, they shall set out second. And I skipped down here because all of these the verses, it's going to follow the same formula. So I'm going to comment, I'm going to put a piece of paper up and just talk about how they camped, how God had instructed them to camp. So verse 16, the total number of the men of the camp of Reuben, 151,450, by their armies, they shall set out second. Verse 17, then the tent of meeting shall set out with the camp of the Levites in the midst of the camps, just as they camped. So they shall set out, every man in his place by their standards. Now let's skip down to verse 24. The total of the number of men of the camp of Ephraim, 108,100. By their armies they shall set out third. Then verse 31. The total of the number of the men of the camp of Dan was 157,600. They shall set out last by their standards. Now I'm hoping, as I do the videos and I put the things up on the screen, I can't think of the word, to help. I'm hoping that you can see this, but I'm going to talk from the from the paper that shows it. So basically, without reading all of the verses, I just read the first 9. On the east side, you're going to have Judah as the leader. Judah is he was Jacob's or Israel's 4th son overall, and he had in his in his family 74,600, and his mother is Leah. I think it's kind of important to mention the mothers. That you have to go back to the book of Genesis to see what happened as to how Jacob or Israel really wound up with 4 wives. But Judah, the 4th son. Then you have Issachar, the 9th son, 54,400, which is what I read. Zebulun, the 10th son, 57,400, and all of their mothers were Leah. Now they're on the east side. So if you're looking at a map, the east is always to the right. They set out first. Then to the south, you had Reuben. Reuben was Jacob's oldest, his firstborn son by birth. Remember, in the last lesson we talked about how the Levites kind of God put them in the place of the firstborn, and God picked them. But Reuben, who is the oldest son, 46,500. Mother was Leah. Then Simeon, the second oldest, 59,300. Again, his mother is Leah. Now you have Gad, who is the 7th son, 45,650. His mother was Zilpah, who was Leah's handmaid. Some might have considered them as concubine, but I read that they were actually the wives of Jacob. So I'm going to call them wives. I'm going to say that I'm not going to say that he had 2 wives and 2 concubines. I'm going to say he had 4 wives. As we had indicated, which I read, then the tent of meeting and the Levites would set out. They're in the middle, and I hope that you can see this on this video here. It's hard when you take a picture and try to put them up here on this video. So the tent of the meeting and the Levites, which were not numbered. Remember, Levi was the 3rd son, but he was not numbered. There's something magical. I'll just go ahead and say it. It's not magical. 12, I believe, stands for governmental perfection. I believe that's what it stands for. So when we lose Levi's taken out, we have to get the number back up to 12, and we'll talk about that really as we go right now. On the west, we had Ephraim. Now, let me just talk about Ephraim and Manasseh. If you can see it on this chart, I show them both as number 11. It's not a mistake. It's not a typo. That's because actually they are the sons of Joseph. So they would be grandchildren to Jacob or Israel. So in place of Levi to get to 12, you have Ephraim and Manasseh, and Joseph is not mentioned. Joseph is represented by his 2 children, which again are the grandchildren of Jacob. So Ephraim has 40,500. That's by Rachel. Rachel is the mother. Manasseh, 11, again, number 11, again, as I just explained, that's Joseph's child, 32,200. And Benjamin, which is the 12th son, again by Rachel, 35,400. So to the west, they set out third. The total was 108,100. Then at the north, on the top of the map, you have Dan, which is the 5th son, 62,700. That by Bilhah. Bilhah was his mother. That's Rachel's. Bilhah was Rachel's maidservant. Then you have Asher, the 8th son, 41,500 by Zilpah. And Leah. Zilpah was Leah's, again, if we mentioned Zilpah was Leah's maidservant. And then you have Naphtali, which is the 6th son, 53,400. And Bilhah was his mother. Again, that's Rachel's maidservant. Now, I don't know if there's really anything in terms of the order. I've read several commentaries. A couple of them say things like, well, if you notice that the largest number, 186,400, they set out first on the east, and that the opening to the tent of meeting was to the east, so that they would need more protection there. Well, it may be something to that, I don't know. There may be, you have different rationale, different commentators give different rationale as to why God had them set up in this order. I remember, it's been a little while, that a good friend of mine did a talk, and he was talking about how if you looked at the numbers, that it kind of looked like a cross if you looked at it from an aerial view. And I think that was, was really uplifting, and it's really something to think about. The bottom line, it is unambiguous as to how God wanted them to camp, the order in which God wanted them to go out, and exactly who the leaders were. Now, again, I didn't read each and every one of them, but these men, most likely all of them would have been the firstborn, were the leaders of their father's household. And we've talked about again that they were all men. Now, I'm giving this lesson as the Donald Trump impeachment trial is really getting started. And I mention that because, even as it's interesting, you'll hear the lawyers from both sides and everybody talking about our rights under the Constitution. And, they're really trying to preserve the nation through the founding fathers. Really, when I hear them talk about the founding fathers, in my mind, it's almost as though they're looking at those men as though they were gods, little g. Now, some people may really get upset with me to hear me say that, but you always hear them talking about our founding fathers, and this is what was intended, and in the Constitution. And I never will forget this. I have a course through the great courses through the teaching company where it talks about various sacred texts of various religions, and right there in there it mentions the Constitution, and they do think of the Constitution as a sacred text. But what about the Bible? What about the Bible? Is there, again, as I had mentioned, there is absolutely zero ambiguity as to the order that God wanted Israel to camp and to set out. Well, we're going to see that even though God, in speaking to Aaron and to Moses, as we get into this book of Numbers, we're going to see that there are going to be some people that have problems with that. I mean, you're going to see Aaron and his sister Miriam, they're going to challenge Moses. You're going to see, and I may have talked about that in the last lesson, Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, they're going to challenge Moses. We can see this because this is clearly written for us. But I'm going to talk about today. You know, I want to make this relevant to us today. Definitely, I had mentioned in previous lessons how there are people out there that, you know, they kind of chuckle when they talk about this Bible, especially when you talk about books such as Leviticus and Numbers, and you think of all these superstitious people that were just acting out of superstition. And how do you know that God spoke to Moses and to Aaron? I know because I read it in the Bible. That's how I know, and I believe it. I believe it to be so. I believe that God is able to speak. I did not see the things that they saw in Egypt. You know, I didn't see the plagues, the plague of the firstborn where God, just imagine, so specific, so precise, that every firstborn child of the Egyptians was struck down and killed. I didn't see that. But you see, I see, and we're going to talk about how God keeps his promises. Let's go over to Genesis chapter 1 and start reading at verse 26. This is God talking, Elohim. Then God said, you know, this is, we're in the creation week. You know, you start at the beginning. You know, in the beginning God created, and it's followed by God said. God said. Well, now down to verse 26. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness, and let them," you know, let the men, or, you know, women to assist the man, let them rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the sky, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. Verse 27, God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. Verse 28, God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and rule over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the sky and over every living thing that moves on the earth." Now, why did I come here I'm going to skip down in my notes a little bit and talk about here subduing. Let me actually turn to it, and I may have to turn to it in the dictionary here. Hold on. Let me open up this dictionary. Subdue. This is the Merriam-Webster's 11th Collegiate Dictionary. I just really want to read two definitions. Number one, to conquer and bring into subjection, vanquish. Number two, to bring under control, especially by an extension of the will, curb, subdue. The reason that I read this, and I'm going to tie this back in to Numbers chapter 2, is God is still working out his plan. There's a war. Israel, or God was preparing Israel for war. But God hasn't given up on his plan for man to subdue the earth. It reminds me of the prayer that we say, Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. God has given mankind a role to do, something to do. Now, let's go over to Genesis chapter 3. Well, I want to make one more comment. In this verse where it says God created, verse 26, in our image. Some scholars believe that word image, that it should be translated more as a verb, or that we are to be imagers of God. And that's, again, part of that subduing. But now let's go to Genesis 3. And I'm going to read the first 3 verses. Now the serpent was more crafty than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, Indeed, has God said, You shall not eat of any tree of the garden? If you go back into chapter 2, you'll see that God told them that they had this whole garden. And he just said, one tree. Don't eat from it. Then I started to say, don't touch it. I actually believe that he did tell them not to touch it. But, people have differences. Why do I say that? Because that's what Eve said later on. But we're not going to really read that. The woman said to the serpent, From the fruit of the trees of the garden we may eat, but from the fruit of the tree which is in the middle of the garden, God said, You shall not eat from it or touch it. Okay, that is in verse 3. So this is where she said it. Not eat from it or touch it, or you will die. Now, why did I read that? Because there are forces out there. Here is called the serpent, or the shining one. There are forces out there that want to get into your mind and have you not listen to God. When we get over there in this book of Numbers, you're going to see that Israel, after they saw all of the plagues that God put on Egypt, they're going to be afraid, or most of them are going to be afraid of the giants that are in the land. Let's go to Exodus 24. Actually, I put that in wrong. Let me see. Exodus 24. Space 5. Let's see here. I put that wrong in my notes here. I might I'm gonna have to skip that one. Let's go to Deuteronomy 28:58. I'll tell you basically what it has dealing with is. I was looking for a passage dealing with a book. Let's go to Deuteronomy 28:58. If you are not careful to observe all the words of this law which are written in this book, to fear this honored and awesome name, the Lord your God. God is telling them to really take care of the book. Let's see, let's go to Deuteronomy 31:24-30. I might come back and see if I can find that one in 24. Let's see, Deuteronomy 31. It says, "It came about when Moses finished writing the words of this law in a book until they were completed, that Moses commanded the Levites who carried the ark of the covenant of the Lord, saying, Take this book of the law and place it beside the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, that it may remain there as a witness against you. For I know your rebellion and your stubbornness. Behold, while I am still alive with you today, you have been rebellious against the Lord. How much more then after my death? Assemble to me all the elders of your tribes and your officers, that I may speak these words in their hearing, and call the heavens and the earth to witness against them. For I know that after my death you will act corruptly and turn from the way which I have commanded you, and evil will befall you in the latter days. For you will do that which is evil in the sight of the Lord, provoking him to anger with the work of your hands. Then Moses spoke in the hearing of all the assembly of Israel the words of this song." Let's go to Joshua 1:8. "This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it." I'm going to read that. "You shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have success." I'm going to stop on this one just for a minute, and the same thing with the other one. You know, when I think about this verse, meditating on the book day and night, and I think about all of the comforts that I have. You know, if I want something to eat, I just go to the fridge and pull it out, and you know, if the fridge is kind of empty, then you run to the grocery store and buy what you need, and somebody, you know, a farmer grows it and prepares it, and then they ship it, and sometimes they ship it all the way across the world, you know, on ocean liners, and ship it to us, and we just go in America to the grocery store and get it. But what if we had to think, let's put ourselves back in the day. What if we had to grow our own food, build our own houses, make our own clothes, be our own doctors and nurses, be the police force. And God is saying, don't let this book of the law depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night. I mean, I forget, and God knew that they didn't have televisions yet, and they didn't have football. Oh, why don't we meditate on his word? I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. I want to read Deuteronomy, Joshua 1:8 and Deuteronomy 6:4 kind of reminds me of that, but so I'm going to read them both. Deuteronomy 6:4-8. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God. The Lord is one. We could talk about that right there. What does it mean the Lord is one? But that's not really why I came here now. Verse 5, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. These words which I am commanding you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your sons. Oh, you shall teach them diligently to your sons, and shall talk of them. Talk, T-A-L-K. There's nothing ambiguous about talk, T-A-L-K. You shall teach them diligently to your sons, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. But again, they didn't have TVs back then, so God was trying to give them something to do. You shall bind them as signs on your hand, and they shall be as frontals on your forehead. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Now, we're going to see something. Let's go over here to 2 Kings. So I've been reading all these verses. Let me see if I can find this other passage here. Bear with me for 1 minute while I do a search. Let's see on this word here, and I want to search for book here. And that, let's see where, let me see. Bear with me for 1 minute. I want to go back to that one, Deuteronomy 30. It's Deuteronomy 30. What was the one that I couldn't read? Oh, Exodus. Exodus 24:7. Let me go ahead over there. Let me read that one before we go over here. Exodus 24:7. Then he took the book of the covenant and read it in the hearing of the people, and they said, "Oh, so I'm so glad that I went back and read this." They said, "All that the Lord has spoken, we will do, and we will be obedient." Well, they're making that pledge. I'm glad that I didn't just skip that one, because they're pledging that they're going to do everything that God has said. Well, now let's go over here to 2 Kings. 2 Kings 22:8. We read before where Moses had told them to keep the book right next to the ark. So we go to 2 Kings 22:8. We're going to read 8-13, and we're going to see that here, that this book, this law is instruction, Torah, they lost it. We'll talk about. Then Hilkiah, the high priest, said to Shaphan the scribe, I have found the book of the law in the house of the Lord. They found it. They had lost it. And Hilkiah gave the book to Shaphan, who read it. Shaphan the scribe came to the king and brought back word to the king and said, your servants have emptied out the money that was found in the house, and they have delivered it into the hand of the workmen who have the oversight of the house of the Lord. Moreover, Shaphan the scribe told the king, saying, Hilkiah the priest has given me a book. And Shaphan read it in the presence of the king. When the king heard the words of the book of the law, he tore his clothes. He just ripped his. He was just. That's really a sign of really getting ready to go into mourning, when you tear your clothes. Then the king commanded Hilkiah the priest, Ahikam the son of Shaphan, Achor the son of Micaiah, Shaphan the scribe, and Asaiah the king's servant, saying, go inquire of the Lord for me and the people and all Judah concerning the words of this book that has been found. For great is the wrath of the Lord that burns against us, because our fathers have not listened to the words of this book, to do according to all that is written concerning us. Now remember, we just read that they promised that they were going to do everything that was in that book. And if you read through the history of Israel, I mean, you see that they were up and down. Sometimes they had good periods and they were following after God, but then they would turn away. You know, right over there in this book of Joshua, which we read the 8th verse of chapter 1, when they're going into the land, you'll read about the sin of Achan, and how Achan wanted to keep back some gold and silver things, and God punished the entire people of Israel because of his sin. And again, we're going to read about it in Numbers as we go through. But I want to read a little bit from the New Testament. Let's go to 1 Corinthians 14:20. You read it. Brethren, do not be children in your thinking, yet in evil be infants, but in your thinking be mature. And let's skip down to verse 40. But all things must be done properly and in an orderly manner. You see that order that we see, that precision that God is explaining in this second chapter of Numbers to fight this battle. It's still there. There are other verses in the New Testament. I am going to read one more. Let's put this over here in context. If you come out of the 13th chapter of Corinthians, many people know, this is for those that don't know, that's the love chapter. And people are, they're desiring various spiritual gifts, but Paul is telling them that love is the greatest gift of all. But they want to speak in tongues, and they want to they want the gift of prophecy, and they want to lay on hands and do all of these things. And the reason that I came over here, one commentary, I don't remember mentioning these two verses. I thought I'd take a look at it. But the thing that it made me think about is, how often do I go into a church assembly? And next thing you know, people just break out and they're quote unquote speaking in tongues, and it sounds like gibberish to me. But this thing says, do it in an orderly manner. Oh, that order that God was calling for in this book of Numbers, chapter 2, where he laid it out. He's still calling for that. I'm going to read one more in Matthew 18, and then I'm going to talk about some things. Matthew 18:15. If your brother sins, go and show him his fault in private. Do it in private. If he listens to you, you have won your brother. But if he does not listen to you, take one or two more with you, so that by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, every fact may be confirmed. Oh, they should be listening to this at the Trump impeachment. If he refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. That's the ecclesia, those that are called out. And if he refuses to listen to the church, let him be to you as a Gentile. Don't associate with them. And a tax collector. Now, why did I read this, and what does this have to do with Numbers? And what is all of this? It's because, these verses that I just read in Matthew 18, my personal opinion is, in dealing with people, that we just might as well take these verses out of the Bible. That we might as well just take them right out. I just heard the story of a young pastor, and sometimes it's old pastors. It's got did what men and women do, and now he's expecting a baby, and he's not married to the young lady. What am I saying? People, I have sinned so many times in my life. I've sinned so many times in my life. Matter of fact, I come right out and say it. I was a young fool. Yep, you heard me say it on this video. I was a young fool. But I don't want to be an old fool. You see, I have gotten serious about reading this book of the law. I have gotten serious about reading and studying this Bible. So when I read passages such as Joshua 1:8 and Deuteronomy 6, I'm serious about that. But and I've been saying that I'm trying to urge whomever I can that believes that the Bible is the Word of God to not just read it at a surface level. And I think I've said it. If you listen to me, and I'm going to say it again, I say it. I had a book on how to read a book, and I said that I can't read, and I promise, because that confused some people. But again, as my granddaughter said, Daddy, how do you read a book on how to read a book? See, sometimes I give people too much credit, but I'm trying to, reading is more than just reading the words. So God, in Numbers chapter 2, is preparing Israel to go to war. He numbered their armies in chapter 1, exempted the Levites from the number. And now in chapter 2, he's telling them how to count. Let's go back and read these last few verses in Numbers chapter 2. That's Numbers 2:32. These are the numbered men of the sons of Israel by their fathers' household. The total of the numbered men of the camps by their army, 603,550. Now, why doesn't it say by their fathers and their mothers' household? And again, God is showing us. I believe God is a God of order. He wants us to be obedient to him. You know, over there where we read over there when Moses was talking about his death, Moses slipped up. Moses got angry and sinned. All of us sin. But let us not practice sin. Verse 33, the Levites, however, were not numbered among the sons of Israel, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. Thus the sons of Israel did according to all that the Lord commanded Moses. So they camped by their standards, and so they set out every one by his family according to his father's household. Well, that was a little bit shorter. In the next chapter, we're going to talk some more about the Levites and some of their duties and everything. So I hope that one of the things that I really, really want to do is make this book of Numbers, well, whether you think it's relevant or not, but I want you to see some of the relevancy. So I was about to say, make this book of Numbers relevant. I can guarantee you that this book of Numbers is not irrelevant to God. Well, hope to see you next time. Take care.